My name is Hilda. I'm sitting in my new, small apartment 2 towns over, looking at the fireproof safe I bought to hold the few reprinted photos from friends. Some nights, I still smell phantom smoke and hear my mother's cold voice saying, "Not our problem. You should have been more careful." It's been a while since that fateful night, but the pain and betrayal are still fresh in my mind. It all started a few weeks ago. I'd been living in that apartment for 5 years. It was my little haven, filled with memories of my late father and the dreams I'd never realized. One night, at around 2:30 in the morning, the shrill sound of the smoke alarm jolted me awake. I quickly tried to put on my shoes, but by the time I got up, the hallway outside my door was already thick with black smoke. It was so dense that I couldn't even see my own hands in front of me. I don't really remember running down the 4 flights of stairs. All I recall is the cold shock of the parking lot concrete under my bare feet. I'd lost my shoes somewhere between the 3rd floor and the street. Wrapped in a kind stranger's blanket, I stood there, watching the orange flames crawl up the windows of my apartment. It felt like my whole life was turning to ash right before my eyes. My grandmother's heirloom quilt, the photo albums from the wedding that never was, and my father's old vinyl record collection that I'd cherished since I was 20, all gone. The fire department managed to control the blaze before it spread to the neighboring units, but my apartment, Unit 3C, was completely gutted. I sat on the curb, wrapped in that blanket, for nearly 2 hours before it even occurred to me to call someone. The first person I thought of was my mother. When she finally picked up on the 4th ring, she sounded groggy and annoyed. I told her what had happened, that my apartment had burned down, that I had nothing left, not even a change of clothes, and that I didn't know where I was going to sleep that night. There was a long, painful silence on the other end of the line. Then, in the coldest voice I'd ever heard from her, she said, "Not our problem. You should have been more careful," and hung up. I sat there, holding my phone, staring at the screen, waiting for it to ring back. I hoped she was just joking, that she'd come in 20 minutes with a warm drink and some clothes. But the phone never rang. I was too numb to be angry that night. I was too busy shivering, too busy watching the firefighters go in and out of the building with axes and hoses, and too busy trying to process the fact that my entire life had been destroyed in less than an hour. A kind woman from the Red Cross gave me a voucher for a motel 3 blocks away. I spent the rest of the night lying on a stiff mattress, staring at a water stain on the ceiling, replaying my mother's words over and over in my head. It was as if she thought I could have somehow prevented the fire, as if I'd left a candle burning on purpose. 2 days later, I got a call from a man named Victor Thompson, a fire investigator with the county. He asked if I could meet him at the burned-out building to go over what they'd found. I thought it was strange, since investigators usually just file a report and move on, but I said yes because I needed answers. I needed to know how my life had ended up in a dumpster outside that charred building. When I arrived, the smell hit me first, that wet, charred, chemical odor that clung to my throat. Victor was standing near where my front door used to be, holding a clipboard, with a county badge clipped to his jacket. He was in his early 40s, with a few streaks of gray in his hair, and his calm, measured voice made me feel like whatever he was about to say was important. He shook my hand and offered his condolences. Then he asked me a question that made my blood run cold. "Do you know who had access to your apartment in the last week? A friend, an ex, a maintenance worker, anyone with a key or a way in?" I told him that I lived alone, and the only people with a key were me and my landlord. He nodded slowly, as if he already suspected I wasn't telling the whole truth. He then explained that the fire hadn't started like most accidental fires. It hadn't begun in the kitchen or from an overloaded outlet. It had started near the back bedroom window, in a spot with no wiring, no appliances, nothing that should have been able to catch fire on its own. "We found something at the scene," he said. "Something that doesn't belong in a normal house fire." He reached into a folder under his clipboard and pulled out a clear evidence bag. Inside was a small, half-melted object. As soon as I saw it, my stomach dropped. My mouth went dry, and my hands started to shake. I recognized it immediately. It was a keychain, half melted, the metal warped and blackened. It was a small silver charm shaped like a rabbit, a birthday gift I'd given my younger stepsister, Lily, 2 years ago. Back then, we were still close. But then she'd asked me for $15,000 to pay off some debts, and I'd said no. I hadn't seen her or that keychain in over a year. I told Victor all this in a voice barely above a whisper. He wrote something down on his clipboard without looking up. "There's more," he said. He explained that the fire had been started with an accelerant, something poured deliberately along the base of my bedroom window. The burn pattern was inconsistent with an electrical or accidental fire. Someone had gotten into my apartment, poured gasoline near the window, and lit it, then left the keychain behind either by accident or, as Victor put it carefully, as a message. I asked him what kind of message someone would leave by burning down someone's home, but he didn't have an answer, and neither did I. That night, my hands trembling so badly I could hardly hold the phone, I called my mother again. I told her what the investigator had found and asked her straight out if she knew anything about Lily being near my building. There was a long silence on the line. Then she started to admit things in bits and pieces, like someone trying to make the truth seem less bad. "Lily had gone to your building the week before," she said. "She needed money and thought you might have some hidden away, some emergency funds she could take without you noticing. She didn't mean to burn the place down," she insisted. "She just wanted to search it. But when she heard your neighbor's dog barking, she panicked. She knocked over a can of paint thinner she found under your sink, and in her rush to cover her tracks, she set it on fire, thinking a small fire would erase the evidence that she'd been there. But it got out of control." I asked her how long she'd known. She said since the morning after the fire, when Lily had shown up at her house, shaking and telling her everything. And she'd told Lily to keep quiet, that it would all blow over, that I'd never find out. That's why she'd said it wasn't her problem. She wasn't being cold about a random accident, she was protecting her daughter from the consequences of destroying my home, my belongings, and every physical reminder of my father I had left. I gave Victor all the information I had: the keychain, the timeline, my mother's confession. 4 days later, Lily was arrested and charged with arson and burglary. My mother wasn't charged with anything, since knowing after the fact isn't the same as committing the crime. But something between us broke that night, and I don't think it can ever be fixed. I haven't spoken to her since the day I gave her name to the investigator. I think about that phone call all the time. I understand now that when she said it wasn't her problem, she meant that protecting Lily from what she'd done mattered more to her than protecting me from losing everything. But I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I've bought a new lock, a security camera, and a fireproof safe. I've learned that I don't need anyone's permission to start over, and I don't need anyone's approval to protect myself from those who were supposed to love me. If this story has moved you, if you've felt even a fraction of what I felt standing on that curb watching my life go up in flames, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like mine deserve to be heard, and there are more real stories about betrayal, family, and the strength it takes to rebuild when those who should protect you turn their backs. Subscribe now so you never miss the next one.